illegal immigration, and human trafficking. Hello everyone, and welcome to News Snark, where the world has gotten so weird that I don't have to make stuff up anymore. That's right, this is January 28th, 2024, and tonight we will talk about Texas, the southern border, and the Second Amendment. And I'm going to do kind of a brief overview to sort of put a lot of different things together for you. So, first off, a lot of people know that there's a problem with the southern border. This has been going on for a very long time. And it's not just a recent occurrence. Some people say it's been going on for decades. I know that I was down there working with the Sheriff's Association in Arizona about 15 years ago, trying to help them figure out how they use technology to smuggle, how the cartels use technology to smuggle drugs and people across the border. You know, this has been a serious concern for a while. And everybody, all our politicians always talk about how they're going to fix it, but they never do. And people want to know why. Well, one of the leading theories that I tend to agree with is the Democrats don't want to stop illegal immigration because they assume that the children of the illegals who become U.S. citizens will vote Democrat, which is probably short-term true and probably long-term false, because these people tend to be very conservative in their beliefs compared to the average American. The Republican leadership, they tend to believe that the illegals will work for cheap, and everybody knows that if you flood the labor pool with a lot of cheap labor without increasing the number of jobs, and that's going to drive down labor prices. So that's sort of the economics behind it on the Republican side. And both of these ideas are probably true with respect to the different politicians. You know, everybody seems to want this. And a lot of people ignore the tragedy that occurs. You know, oh, these people need a better home and all that. And I feel for that. You know, I'm not going to get into the good or bad of it. You know, that's for you guys to decide. I'm just going to give some context. I know that when I was down there 15 years ago, people that I talked to on the border, including, you know, illegal immigrants, were talking about how they would often be tricked by the drug cartels to come along, saying that they were being enticed, that this is going to be a legitimate way to get across the border, and they'd be given, asylum or papers or whatever. And then when they got to the border, the guns would come out and they'd be forced to drop their bags and have to carry drugs across the border for the cartels. The women and children would be, you know, raped or sold into sex slavery. There's a lot of bad stuff that happened. And this is coming from people I talked to down there. I didn't witness any of it. Directly. You know, all I saw, I did see a, you know, caravan of people, you know, coming across, you know, maybe 30 people marching through this farm that I was staying at. But, you know, allegedly a lot of bad stuff happens down there. And some of the farmers I spoke with talked about how the illegals who tried to resist the cartels, who didn't want to carry drugs, or tried to defend themselves from being raped, would be, you know, murdered or left out in the desert to die, and any farmers who assisted them would then also be, you know, murdered. So the whole thing's bad down there. So why is the federal government allegedly helping these people out? Well, the federal government's going to claim under Biden that they don't want people dying in the desert, so they'd rather go and help people get across and put them someplace, asylum seekers and all that, and that's going to be the federal argument. The Texas argument is that, you know, these people don't have to come in the first place, and the barriers that they're putting in place are already on American soil, that they're not trying to drown people in the river, and they'd rather people come across through the legal points of entry where it's safe. So that's essentially the argument. Now, from an economic side of things, like I said, there's benefits and drawbacks to, you know, to immigration. It does help to have more workers, but if you bring in too many, you can lower wages, and there's a bunch of trade-offs. So it's not just a one-sided issue, but in general, the people of Texas, where this is boiling over, the people of Texas don't really want this, and generally poor people in America don't want competition for low-wage jobs. Now, some people will argue that, oh, these migrants are going to work jobs that Americans don't want, which is partly true. They'll work jobs that Americans don't want to work at the price that they're being offered. But work needs to get done, and if nobody's going to work, as a business owner, if I want a job done and nobody wants to do the job for $10, then I might have to pay $15 or $20. Eventually there's a price that I have to pay where people will then want to do the job that I have for them. And so the free market economy tends to balance itself out. And that's going to be the argument against, bringing in, hordes of people. So what's going on specifically in Texas right now? So Texas has been erecting barriers that, to prevent people from getting across. Biden and Trump obviously had different immigration policies. It's alleged that Biden is tearing down some of the Trump border barriers. I haven't been down to the southern border in probably 10 years, so I haven't witnessed any of that. But there's images on the internet of like forklifts lifting up razor wire, or Customs and Border Patrol opening up gates and things like that. You can find it out there if you look. So there's definitely stuff going on. And so Texas erected their own barriers and got into an argument with the federal government. The federal government says, get these barriers down. And the government started taking down the Texas barriers. The Texas governor sent in the National Guard, the Texas State National Guard, to go and expel the Customs and Border Patrol people who are like, hey man, we're just doing our job. And I get it. There's two sides to every issue. But the current struggle is Texas says, get the hell out of our state. You're not helping anything. You're making it worse. And the federal government says, well, we have jurisdiction. Supreme Court has currently sided with the federal government, saying the federal government has jurisdiction over the border, which is true. However, what's also true is that in the Constitution, if the federal government's not doing their job, then the states can then take over. The Constitution very narrowly outlines these are the tasks assigned to the federal government, and everything else belongs to the state, and to the individual states. And if the federal government does not do their job, the states can then step in and do what needs to be done. So that's essentially the argument back and forth. The federal government claims they're doing their job. State of Texas claims they're not. Now, where things get complicated is that a number of states have pledged their support to assist the state of Texas, sending troops, sending law enforcement, sending supplies, resources, money, etc. And if you look at the states that have committed to help Texas resist the federal government, it looks a lot like an electoral college map, which, let's face it, the places that tend to have Republican governors are going to tend to do Republican things, and the states that have Democrat governors are going to tend to do Democrat things. And in my experience, there's a vast difference between Republican governors and Republican representatives at a state level versus the, Republican neocons in Congress who are largely indistinguishable from the Democrats. Just like there's a big difference between the Democrats at a state level, or certainly at a local level, versus the Democrat neocons in Congress, who are largely indistinguishable from the Republicans. I mean, they're all, it's just a different set of rules. So, what's going on? I know that here in Oklahoma, the Governor Stitt has pledged to support Texas with everything that, that's needed. And a lot of states are going to do this. Now, some people have raised concerns, that the Biden administration said you have to quit doing this by a certain deadline or else, but nobody's really specified what the or else is. And, a lot of people are concerned that this could lead to civil war, which I don't think it will. And I'll tell you why. Now, I could be wrong, but modern civil wars are not going to be a, red states versus blue states, the North and South marching against each other in large organized formations. That was really an anomaly by Civil War standards. Most civil wars resemble more like the Balkans or South Sudan or Rwanda or any of these just absolutely awful places. It's very unlikely that you'll have organized forces marching the field. Now, it could happen. Biden could try to federalize the Texas National Guard, and the governor of Texas could then say no, and then Biden could try and federalize other National Guards, and the states could say no, and then you'll have a crisis. Will Biden send in the National Guards from other states that support him, or will he send in the U.S. military? But there could be divisions there, and it could get very messy very quickly, and that's the concern. Here's why I think it will not happen. Um, there are currently, whoops, that's the wrong button. There are currently about 100 million gun owners in America, uh, which the Second Amendment would define as the militia, we the people. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand, and you can reference like the Four Boxes Diner on YouTube for really good constitutional breakdown of how all this stuff works. Mark Smith he knows this stuff. As a general rule, there's about 100 million armed American, law-abiding Americans. I'm not talking about the criminals. I'm not talking about the drug dealers or any of that stuff. Law-abiding gun owners, there's about 100 million of them, give or take. That means that the law-abiding armed American population outnumbers every military in the world combined by like a factor of 10. America is the uninvadable country once the people decide we've had enough. And this is why Japan never considered invading America in World War II. This is why Hitler never considered invading America in World War II. This is why, many of our modern adversaries are like, we'll go and fight these proxy wars or other things, but nobody's seriously considering invading America. Now, they may nuke the hell out of us and wipe us off the planet, but they're not going to send troops in because that'd be insane. And if you think about the U.S. military only about 1 in 10 of the U.S. military people are active combat arms, like trained fighters. Everybody is, trained to use a weapon, but most of them are desk jockeys, logistics support, because it takes about 10 people behind the scenes for every one soldier in the field actually doing the fighting. So that means the U.S. military probably only has 100,000 active combatant, potential combatants scattered all over the world. Maybe 200,000, 250,000. It doesn't matter. Even if every U.S. military member sided with Biden and went to invade Texas, and every National Guard member in the country sided and decided to invade Texas, there's more gun owners in Texas than there are, U.S. military people, probably by a factor of 3. Because like everybody in Texas I know has a gun. And when a civil war happens, Biden will talk about, oh, you need, you can't stop F-15s. What we've observed in modern war is that when stuff happens, the people flying the F-15s or the people piloting the drones, sure, they're going to do a lot of damage. And then the armed citizenry in these Civil War nations then go and start murdering the family members of the people supporting the team they don't like. It gets really messy really fast. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And I think most Americans will very quickly become aware of that, of just how awful it is. And certainly the people flying the drones and flying the F-15s know that they can't simultaneously fight a war and protect their family. America's never had a war on our own soil since since we fought with Mexico 150 years ago, 100 years ago. When was the Mexican American War? That was before the Civil War. I mean, that's a long time ago. Actually, nobody in our lifetime has had to fight a war on American soil. I don't want to be one of those, oh, I just normalize things. I don't think it's going to happen, because the numbers are not in favor, of the federal government or any one state becoming authoritarian beyond a certain point. And this is the whole point of the Second Amendment. The First Amendment gives people the right to speak their minds, and the Second Amendment makes sure that people have the right to speak their minds. And if you go into the Federalist Papers and look at a lot of the founding documents and what the Founding Fathers were talking about, 250 years ago, this is the kind of stuff they were talking about. So, ultimately speaking, unless Biden's really dumb, he's going to negotiate or back down, or they're going to let this settle out, in court, because ultimately, violating federal law to import, millions of people, it's kind of illegal. Yes, the federal government has the right to do a lot of this, and you can argue, oh, these are asylum seekers, these are, everybody knows that's bullshit. Most of these people are economic migrants. They self-proclaim as economic migrants, and a lot of these people aren't even coming from Mexico. These are, there's people coming from China, there's people coming from Russia, from Africa, from South America who are passing through many safe nations on their way to America. So, this is, I think that the majority of the armed American people are going to side with Texas. And, certainly rural America will, because that's where it gets impacted the most. And even some of these large Democrat cities are starting to say, hey, we can't take in any more illegals. Everybody was a sanctuary city until they had to deal with it themselves. And once they get overrun, and I'm not making a judgment one way or the other against immigration. I think that there's many positive aspects to immigration. However, from a practical economic sense or logistics sense, America can only deal with so many people so fast. And so that's the standoff. Now, what do I think is going to happen? It really comes down to, how determined Governor Abbott of Texas is. If you listen to an interview with Ken Paxton, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General of Texas, he says that the governor's pretty serious. I don't know if he's going to back down. Now, previously, I thought there was a good chance that he'd just make a show to help it, make his voters happy and whatnot. But then when all these states started supporting him, remember, you've got a lot of states all pledging support. Now you've got like half the country. Now, yes, I realize that, population-wise, this probably isn't half the country. This is probably only, like a third. New York and California are huge states, but Florida and Texas are pretty big too. So, we'll see. I don't think this is going to go violent. And the reason is because that would just be suicidal. Now, is Biden dumb enough to do that? I would think not. I mean, the guy's a politician all his life. He's in it to, get the votes and get the campaign donors and grift the money, just like all the other jerks in D.C. are. I don't think he's going to do it. But you never know. I mean, there could be a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. I mean, I'm sure there is. But if it does come down to the federal government versus Texas, as long as the state of Texas doesn't back down, my money's on Texas. I don't think, as much as I love to brag about how OU beats Texas more often than not at football, the reality is Texas is a big state. They're economically self-sufficient. They contribute more resources and money to the country than they absorb. They used to be an independent nation before they joined the United States of America, and I think they have special clauses in their state constitution that they can just peace out and leave. And there's a vote coming up for that. And I don't think Texas is going to leave because that'd be stupid. They get a lot of power by being part of the United States. But on the other hand, a lot of people in Texas feel like the U.S. is dragging them down. So we'll see what happens. But the world's getting awfully weird. Or like my friend who just got out of prison told me, Mark, what the hell happened in the last couple of years? I wasn't gone that long. Well, the world got pretty weird and everybody's getting awfully agitated. So stay safe and, make sure that you have, just in case, make sure that you have supplies to last for a few weeks of craziness in case things get really weird. I think things will get weirder before they get better. But I can't possibly imagine that we're going to have like all-out Yugoslavia-style civil war in America, because that would be messier than anyone can possibly imagine. Now, I think you're going to see a lot of lawfare and legal fights and a lot of just peripheral, bullshit going on. But I don't think you're going to see mass amounts of shooting. But what I also think is I think that, if you start seeing large protests and large riots, there's going to probably be some pushback. So, things can get kind of spicy, but I don't think we're going to go off the cliff. Anyway, I hope this explains what's going on. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see everyone next time. Thank you, and goodbye. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did like it, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. You can also check out my website, Bobtheorc.com, where you can download a free copy of my dad's book and some other things. Have a nice day. Goodbye.